How do you like my $30 billion lighting setup? Or this fancy backdrop that cost a couple $100,000 for that. So anyways, the production value and the camera I'm using an Android, and this ain't no million K or something like this. I think I'm shooting in HD. So anyways, I guess I'm gonna talk about like regrets, old man regrets. So I think I saw an interview show where they were talking about, do you have regrets? Do you have regrets of and they were interviewing older people like me if they had any regrets, and a lot of people said they had no regrets for all this and that. And I'm gonna do a half hour regrets. I'm going to be straight up. I mean, there's some things if I could have done them differently. Uh, so I'm going to be all over the map. I'm going to jump time. I'm going to go future and past and present. So I'll be kind of all over the map with that. So back when I was about 16, I had this girlfriend, and her uncle saw a picture of me. He came across a picture of me, and he said that this guy was the head commercial producing casting director for Los Angeles, for Hollywood. And he saw my picture, and he said, can you bring your boyfriend down to Hollywood and have him work as a model, and I can keep him busy full time for a long time. Like, I would have had a full time job working as a model for the biggest agency, the biggest agent at the time. I'm not cooking this up. I'd like it if I was, but I'm not. This is a true story. And so I had an opportunity to jump right into being a number one model. Naturally, after that, you get into movies and acting and everything. It kind of goes along with. They see your face all the time, and that was back when it was really, really tough to get in the business. It was really hard, so that was a rare, once in a lifetime opportunity that I got to go directly into the business. Then another time, I'm talking about just movie opportunities. Another time I was in a restaurant, and I was in the Bay Area, Sunnyvale or San Jose or Mountain View. Maybe it was Sunnyvale. But we're at this restaurant. I'm with my girlfriend. And this guy walks up and he says, I'm a movie producer. And he goes, I want to do a screen test, and I want you to be like the main role or the second to the main role in my movie, in this movie I'm doing. And I thought, nah. Part of me, well, I'll just stick with that, and then I'll get into the reasons why. But I passed on it because part of it was I didn't want to commit to a full-time anything. At that point in my life, I wasn't serious about. I knew that if I did either one of those jobs, that would be a serious commitment. I'd be fully committing to something full-time, and didn't want to commit to something full-time. Then also, I had this fear that if I came into too much money and too much power too quick, that I would wind up killing myself. It'd be kind of like if you give a 8-year-old a Maserati or a high-end Porsche, it would be like too much horsepower. I felt I think I had to interfere of avoiding success because I was afraid that I would self-destruct, that I wouldn't be able to handle that amount of power at that age. And maybe that's true. Maybe if I would have gone down that road, maybe I would have ended up a drug overdose instead of being an old fogey like I am now. And then the other media opportunity I had was I was producing my own TV show. So it's a long, odd story, and I'm going to tell it. So I did kind of charity work. And so my charity work for the charity organization I wanted to, one was you could answer phones, and the other was you could give people rides to places. And so I was a driver. I was a very good driver when I was younger, and so I would taxi people around. I would drive people around. That was my job. And I drove fast. I drove crazy. So I remember one time I'd pick up some people and I'd drive them for like half a mile, and they'd go, "Can you slow down?" or whatever, and they would be so scared they'd say, "Let me out of the car." Let me. I mean, even hitchhikers. I was such a crazy, drove like a bat out of hell. That and I had fast cars that they would get so scared I'd offer them a ride for free, hitchhikers, and they'd want out in like a couple miles because I was such a crazy driver. So this one thing I did for the volunteer organization was to pick up this homeless guy and give him a ride and then drop him off. And so I gave him a ride and I dropped him off. And then when I dropped him off, it was a house, but it had a bunch of antennas sticking out of it that's going to be bugging you, isn't it? So anyways, uh, I dropped him off in front of a house, but it had a bunch of television antennas and radar dishes and all that stuff, and I could just kind of tell that looks like a movie studio, or some type of media. They're interacting with satellites or whatever, and I'm wondering. The guy was obviously homeless. He was dressed homeless. He was homeless. Not to be stereotypical, but I'm wondering what was he doing going in that building? It just didn't make sense to me. So I thought about it for a year, 1 year. And the curiosity, I just couldn't forget about that experience. So I went back to that building and I walked in the front door. And they go, "This is public access TV." And I go, "What's that?" And they go, "Well, you sign up in 2 weeks. We got this class and we'll tell you exactly what it is and all that stuff." So I sign up, I take the class, and they tell me what public access TV is. So back in the day, in that state at that time, there was a contract with the city and Viacom or one of those major cable companies that the general public had to have a certain amount of access to media time. Part of the constitutional right to free speech was the general public had to have access to the airwaves or television for a certain period of time. I think that contract has been disappeared or altered or whatever, but anyways. So what they would do is they'd train it. This is way back in the analog days, so they had like 3 tube cameras, and the lights were different, and the equipment was different than it is now. The editing equipment, there was no digital; it was all analog. So your decks, your editing equipment, was videotape. So if you stayed paused too long on doing an edit, it would literally burn a hole in the videotape. So it was 1 inch. We were using 1 inch broadcast, or it was 3/4 broadcast. So, anyways, so back to I take the class, and turns out that I can take other classes. Like if I want to learn how to edit for free, I can take an editing class. If I want to take photography, studio lighting, sound lighting, directing, technical director, TD, etc. So all aspects of working in television studio. Now, I already at that point in my life as a hobby, I was an amateur photographer. I was semi-pro, professional photography, and I like doing landscapes. I didn't like doing people all that much, but I like still photography because it captures that 1 second of life. I'm going to end up doing 2 of these regret shows. But I like still photography because life is always changing. I'm always changing. Tomorrow, if I held this camera in this exact same place, it's same thing. My facial hair would be a little bit longer. I would be different. I mean, everything is always changing all the time. But I really had a passion for still photography, because it froze like a second or 1/60th of a second or 1,000th of a second. I was so interested, I actually volunteered for professional photographers for free and commercial photographers. I called them up in the Yellow Pages. That was back when we had phones and Yellow Pages. This is way before what we got now. And I called up a bunch, just down the list. And I'd say, hey, I'll work for free if you'll just teach me. So I'll do grip work. I'll set up the lighting. I'll set up the props, everything. I'll help you move your camera equipment around for like wedding photographers or still product photographers and all that stuff. So I got interested in photography, and then I got experience. I took some classes. I took some darkroom classes and all that stuff. Anyway, so I started doing a public access. So I started volunteering for TV shows. So first was setting up miking people for talk shows, putting lavs on them, or holding boom mic, like a mic that goes above their head. Like sometimes in the older TV shows, like Johnny Carson, you'll see the boom mic accidentally get in the shot. I think there's one where Robin Williams starts jumping up at the boom mic and barking at it, being funny. But anyway, and then my favorite show back then was Johnny Carson. It still is. Yeah. Nobody could. I could go on about Johnny Carson, but I was raised on Carson. I was raised in an age where I saw a lot of Carson and all that stuff. So Carson was like my favorite, and always will be. And once Carson left that show was, you can't. There's no way you can fill those shoes. Nobody can be Johnny Carson. Nobody can do that. Nobody could be. Johnny Carson was Johnny Carson. He had a phenomenal sense of humor too. I'm going off track a little bit, but I mean, he was right up there with comedy, with like he had Robin Williams, and his mentor was, why am I drawing a blank? But anyways, Carson threw in a one-liner, and because the audience and everybody was so busy, preoccupied with Williams, what Carson said was pretty funny, but it went over the audience's head because they're so dialed into Williams, Robin Williams. So anyways, back to that. I started out, I was volunteering in a TV because I got tired with still photography. So I got tired of having the camera parked in one area, and I mostly specialized in landscapes, nature, animals, and stuff like that, and that type of photography. And I wanted to get into moving like where the camera actually moves. So I wanted to get into video and where you actually physically move the camera during the shot. So the next step for that, interested in photography, was from this homeless guy, coincidentally, his public access studio, as I took studio cam. Then I started volunteering for shows. So I started off like a camera 3. So you have a headset, and then you have a TD, technical director, and they say like uh, they're going to go to a wide shot. So I was 3, so I was usually just wide shots of the 3 people, 3 or 4 people, or the audience, or the products usually. And so the TD would say, going out to a wide shot on camera 3, ready 3, take 3, boom. Once he says take 3, there's a light above my studio camera that goes on that lets people know that are on the stage that my camera's hot. So people want to know sometimes if the camera was hot. And then the TD gave me warning so I could set up for the shot, unless it was intentional to have a moving shot. Like if they say, we want you to get a close up on the product, and we're going to have you slowly zoom out into a 3 shot. So the TD would tell me, okay, this is what we're going to do, while he's working the other cameras, because and I had on headsets. And so then I would start off on the product, and then I'd slowly zoom out into a 3 shot. And then we did dolly shots. So we learned dolly trucking. I mean, I could go get a job as working in a TV studio tomorrow if I spoke Japanese for like any TV station, or back in the States or any country. Because I have experience all the way from setting up mics to all aspects, to editing, to doing TD, to doing director. I was never fast enough in the brain for other reasons. But anyway, so with the regrets with that is I graduated from. So I grew up to camera 1, which was usually the host most of the time, or the host and the guest. So it was usually the camera 1. You had to be the fastest, and that was back when those studio cameras weren't autofocus. So you had to pull in, focus on their eye, and then pull back out into a wide shot. So if you zoomed in on them, you're in focus all the way through the shot. I don't know what the camera is right now. And there were 3 tubes back then, back in the analog days. So if you aimed a camera at a light, you would literally burn a hole in the tube, and they'd have to replace the tube, and it would cost a bunch of money to fix the camera. So anyways, you learn all this stuff in the class and all that. So anyways, I became like noted for camera 1. So I was working for, I got a reputation for being a good television studio photography. So I was really good at that. And I volunteered for other people's shows and all that and everything. And then I got bored with that. And then we had these shows called Hot Studio Lives. So what these were is most shows you see on TV where they have a call-in, or they don't even have call-ins anymore, but it's usually recorded, like they record an hour or 2 before, or a week before, or a month before, or 6 months before, or a year before they air it. It goes on TV. And they had these live television studio shows. Now that got me by the whatevers, because I was really interested in doing live TV. I just doing stuff that you had a basic premise, like what you were going to talk about, or what some of the topics were going to be, and some of the changes for breaks and commercials, and some of the timing. You had like a shooting script, and so you had a general idea and all that stuff. But with the live TV shows, you didn't have a shooting script. So we'd go in and do live TV. So that means if you made a mistake, I think what was there? God, I think we had 60,000 viewers at that station at that time, if they happened to be tuned in, right? Or maybe it was higher than that. But so, anyways, if you make a mistake, it's in front of 60,000 people or whatever. I mean, once you make that mistake, there's no going back. It's not like if you're playing guitar and you make a mistake, or you're doing theater, you can't really improv. I mean, sometimes you can improv and pull it off. But anyways, so I started doing live TV, and my live television show became famous. So there was two or three other shows. One was a comedy show, one was Bong Hit Finals, and the other one was Got Us Kringen. And there was some other shows, and we would invite each other on each other's shows and be on each other's shows and all that stuff. And then I got started getting really, really high ratings because I took phone calls. I mean, it was so bad that people would do emergency interrupts just to get on the phone to say what they wanted to say during the show. And for an emergency interrupt back then, it was like $5 out of your pocket to make an emergency interrupt call. And then eventually, even after a year, you think that the operators would know that if their person wants an emergency interrupt for this phone number, that it's for the television station show, that it's not really an emergency. But I guess maybe they're making their $5. I don't know. So they, like, I'd be in the middle of the conversation, and the operator would butt in and say, "Will you accept an emergency interrupt from so and so?" And I'm like, "No, I'm still talking to this person." And then one of the shows, I got in an argument with the operator about the TV show. I'm like, "This is a TV show. I'm talking to somebody right now. I will not accept an emergency interrupt because we're not done talking about this thing." So I don't know. So that made a lot of people watch the show, because a lot of people would never ever want to be in front of a camera, but they wanted their opinion out. They wanted to say something either nasty, bad, or good, or positive. Or it was before pot was legal, so we got a lot of legalized pot, click, or pot is good, or so we got a lot of calls like that and all that stuff. So um yeah, I'm going to do another regret show. But so what happened was, my television show could have gone into syndication. So I had an opportunity to have a live talk show. I became a host and interviewed people, and I interviewed artists and musicians and politicians and religious figures, Muslims, Christians, artists, people from all different walks of life. And my shows started getting really popular enough to where the regular network shows, we were becoming more popular than them. So I had a choice of either sticking it out as an engineer or going into syndication on the TV show. Now, I don't know if we would have gone international. If not, maybe it would have been international, or if we would have gone national. I was already famous at that point. Like if I walked into a grocery store, somebody would start laughing, and I wouldn't connect the dots. I'd be like, "Why is this purposely laughing their head off at me? Because they don't even know me, and I'm just checking out groceries." And then, oh, okay, they saw me on my TV show. Like, I didn't realize that I was rising to fame. My show was becoming famous. So I had a chance to go national, become famous, to cross from public access, which was what I was doing, to cross the bridge from public access to go into national syndication, which maybe it would have gone there, and it would have flopped. or maybe I would have gotten nationally syndicated and been a multi-billionaire. I don't know. But that's kind of a shoulda, woulda, coulda that I look back and I think I probably should have gone into syndication when I had the opportunity to do that. A couple people that had a couple branch off shows from that. One of them became somewhat famous in Hollywood, and another guy became famous, and then the gal, I've just hooked up with her again on Facebook. I kind of interested to see where that conversation goes. What was ironic is that this show Bong Hit Finals. So Bong Hit Finals, this other show that was on the channel I was on, there was a couple of really wild shows. Bong Hit Finals is people, whoever could take the longest bong hit, and whoever took the longest bong hit, they got a prize in the mail. So like if it took them a minute, and you could hear them going, you could hear them taking the bong hit. It was called Bong Hit Finals. The whole premise of the show was who could take the longest bong hit. Now the ironic thing is the police department was 3 blocks away. And they never came in, and they could have, because pot was illegal back then. They could have came in and arrested the people doing the Bong Hit Final show while they were filming if they wanted to, but that never happened. But that was, I guess, another opportunity that I had, shoulda, woulda, coulda, to go into national syndication, across that line, to go national with the TV show. At that age, I probably would have been able to handle the money and not self-destruct. Whereas when I was younger, with the other opportunities that I had to self-destruct, I could have. Those shows that I did, they're still up. If you know how to look for them, you can find them. Multiple camera shoots, live television shows, public access. I'm under a different name and I look completely different. But yeah, that's one of the opportunities that I had that I kind of going national, that I passed on, that I kind of regret. This is just the beginning of the old man regrets. Shoulda, woulda, coulda. The old man regrets series. I got another. I'm gonna eat up. I can see that I'm gonna eat up the time. Our shows were a tight 28 minutes. We had to do them in 28 minutes. Right now I'm at 28 minutes. What I see on the viewfinder and all that. So yeah, I guess I'll do an old man regrets 2 or whatever. This is financially related, the 2 or whatever, or the next one, but anyway, so that's it.